I want to first invite the students from PS 88, their Law Club, to do the Pledge of Allegiance and then sing God Bless America.
Students of PS 88, welcome to Ridgewood. Now we're going to read the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With foam, God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, lands that are love, stand beside her and guide her. With the light from above, from the mountains to the valleys, to the oceans, white with foam.
Okay, well, let's give another round of applause and thank PS 88, Mr. Mintz, who leads the Law Club, Miss Audrey Glass, who's here from PS 88, and Principal Quintana for joining us here and all that they do for the Ridgewood community. Okay, thank you, boys and girls.
Follow me.
Follow Mr. Mintz. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning again. So I'm very thrilled about this designation. And I have to say it would not be possible if not for some very important people who are here today. And first, let me thank my colleague, Councilmember Antonio Reynoso. Councilmember Reynoso and I both get to share Ridgewood. And he will speak momentarily. But I have to say, most importantly, the landmark process is not an easy one. It takes a long time to get it through the rounds of approval, and we would not have been able to get that approval if it was not for Landmark's chair, Shuna Ranovan, who is here today. Please stand up and we'll hear from her momentarily. We also are joined by Landmark's Preservation Chair, Christina Davis. Christina. And locally, the president of Ridgewood Property Owners, Paul Kersner, also known as Mr. Ridgewood. Just ask Paul anything about Ridgewood and he'll tell you. He'll tell you the whole history. We're lucky to have his leadership. Also, we are joined today by Linnea Curie, who is the chairperson of Community Board 5, and Community Board 5 District Manager, Gary Giordano. We have the commanding officer at the 104 Precinct, Captain Wapner. Barbara Toscano, who runs Peter Cardilla Senior Center. We have David Aguilera, who represents, who's from Assemblywoman Catherine Nolan's office. We have some other community board members, of course, Ted Renz, who runs Ridgewood Local Development Corporation and the BID, as well as John Meyer, who is on the community board. I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. And momentarily we'll hear from leaders from the community board, but just let me say a few words about this historic designation. When people think of New York City, they think of so many different characteristics. And it's so much a part of who we are, all of our small neighborhoods. And Ridgewood really exemplifies that character. And it's so important that we're able to preserve the rich history and culture that Ridgewood has to provide. And if you look behind me, you see these beautiful row houses. Now, it is not the first time we've done a historic designation in Ridgewood. This represents this third district. So we've done North Ridgewood, South Ridgewood, and now we're doing Ridgewood Central. This particular landmarking represents over 900, almost 1,000 buildings that will be preserved forever. And the state recognizes over 3,000 in Ridgewood, and we need, although we've been able to do so much preservation, we still have more to do. And now I'd like to call up Antonio Reynoso to say a few words.
I want to say thank you to Councilmember Crowley for inviting me to come today to this landmarking. I do want to say, Commissioner, thank you for being here. And now that you see what we all know and what we all see, I hope that we could get everything landmarked in a timely fashion. That's what we really want. It's not easy to get things landmarked, let me tell you. We've been trying very, very hard for a long time, even before I was a council member, to get the historic portions of district that are already federally and state recognized into the city process. It's one of the top priorities that we have as elected officials because the character of this neighborhood here in Ridgewood is special in a way that it isn't anywhere else. So I'm here in an envious position alongside Councilmember Crowley and hoping that we can continue to do more. And congratulations to Central Ridgewood and 70th Avenue for this day today. And thank you again, Councilmember Crowley, for inviting me.
And everyone around the world knows Queens for its diversity, and we're celebrating that diversity here today in Ridgewood, and we are also the largest historic district in all of Queens. Now I'd like to ask the Chair of the Landmarks Preservation Commission, Chair Srinivasan, to come say a few words.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here today for the unveiling of Central Ridgewood's historic street signs. These signs tell us where we are in more ways than one. They tell us you're in a historic district. You are in an area that is special and significant to New York City. Central Ridgewood Historic District is especially significant to me, as it's the first historic district designated under my tenure as chair in 2014. I remember one of the things that I did first when I joined the commission, and that was to come out to Ridgewood. I was struck by its historic uniformity, its cohesive streetscape of yellow Chrysler brick, and the wide extent of these row houses with close to 1,000 buildings. The fact that it's in Queens and a borough of immigrants, a place for all classes and cultures, made it all the more exciting. The histories of different communities are rich and diverse, and through our historic districts, we're able to tell these stories to all. This district represents one of the most architecturally distinguished enclaves of working-class dwellings in New York City during the early 20th century. At that time, these buildings were a significant upgrade from earlier tenements and served as a model for affordable housing during a period in New York City when the population was growing rapidly. Most of the houses in Central Ridgewood were constructed between 1906 and the First World War by German Americans and immigrants from Germany. Ridgewood became an ideal location for upwardly mobile German Americans to relocate from areas that were overcrowded, such as Bushwick, Williamsburg, and Lower East Side. Remarkably, most of these buildings remain unchanged since their completion 100 years ago. It's a real testament to all the property owners and homeowners who have been looking after their homes. And today, Ridgewood represents an important part of the development of housing in New York City. Historic street signs allow us to celebrate and signal the special sense of place of this neighborhood. And finally, I'd like to say none of this would have been possible without the leadership of Councilmember Crowley and Councilmember Reynoso. Your commitment to your constituents is unwavering, and your endorsement of this district has been the reason why it's been successful and will be protected for generations. Our partners in this endeavor have always been Community Board 5 and Ridgewood Property Owners and Civic Association, and their steadfast leaders, Vinnie Arcuri, Gary Giordano from Community Board 5, and Paul Kersner. And a big shout out to them. They've all been tireless advocates and supporters. And finally, I'd like to thank Christina Davis, Chair of New York Landmark Preservation Foundation. For all of you who don't know this, it's a foundation that was created to support the Landmark Preservation Commission's work and that provides street signs all over the city. Her program is responsible for ensuring that historic districts and landmarks throughout the city are recognized, commemorated, and celebrated. So once again, thank you all.
Thank you, Chair Srinivasan. I didn't know that we were the first district once you became chair, so that makes it even more special. Thanks for sharing that with us. Next, I'd like to call up Paul Kersner. Earlier I said how instrumental Paul has been in this historic district preservation of it, and he also is the president of the Ridgewood Property Owners and Civic Association.
Good morning. Good morning. December the 6th, 1983, at the old Ridgewood Post 123 on Caliber Avenue, we unveiled the first designation of landmarking in Ridgewood. Ralph Penza from Channel 2 News, who's long retired, covered that event. And at that time, we unveiled the designation of the 2,982 buildings in the federal and state designation. I didn't say city because we didn't get, nor did we seek landmarking from the city at the time. forward that by 10 years, and we began the process of seeking landmarking from the city. We're about halfway there. We have 1,119 buildings in of the 2,982 that are in this red room. 1329 are in the city designation. So we're about halfway, not quite halfway. So hopefully with the new commissioner, we will redouble our efforts and continue that trend. We are very fortunate in this community to have a good district manager in Gary Giordano, a good chairman in Vinnie Arcuri, and two very good council people. They're very different from one another, but in that diversity, we find comfort and great support. They have been wonderful to Ridgewood, not just in landmarking, but in many other ways. And so we thank Antonio and Elizabeth for your help and your continued support. I will leave you with this. I don't like to play second fiddle to anybody. And this neighborhood on the designation scale, there are two neighborhoods in the city of New York that are larger than Ridgewood. And those two neighborhoods are Greenwich Village, and when Ed Koch was mayor and he came out here, the first thing he said to me was, "I beat you." And I didn't know what he was talking about, and then he told me. I said, "Oh." The number two neighborhood, or the first thing, the largest historic district in the city is in Sunset Park, believe it or not, and they have Ridgewood beat by about 15 buildings. That will not stand. And with the help of the commissioner, we will meet them and beat them. We are probably in the top 10 of historic districts in the nation. So we're in good company nationwide. And hopefully whoever the next president is of the United States will come to visit us when we reach that top pinnacle for landmarking in the country. So I want to thank all of you for your support, for coming out. And don't forget, when we finish here, we go down to the Cozy Corner restaurant two blocks down. And Rudy's Bakery has baked us a special Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte for all of you. So let me get out of the way here so we can finish this and go down there. Thank you all for coming.
Next, we'll hear from Vinnie Arcuri, Chair of Community Board 5.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Elizabeth and Antonio, Commissioner. Please, it's a pleasure. You know, at my age, almost everything's historic to me. Because, you know, I was going to say I probably have ties as old as some of these buildings, and it's true. Not the 100-year-old ones, but the 60 and 70-year-old ones. We are probably, Community District 5 is probably the most diverse district in the city of New York. We're part of the most diverse county in the world, Queens County, and we've always been working class immigrant communities, and Ridgewood has been that way. My father was born in Ridgewood in 1900, had his business in Ridgewood. I grew up, after we moved out of Brooklyn, I grew up in Glendale, and it's just one whole thing. Yesterday, someone asked me why I stayed, why I still live here. And I said, I don't know, there's no reason to leave. And you can see that by the new influx of new immigrants. The hipsters are coming, they're here already. Everybody wants to be in New York, and I think half of them want to be in Ridgewood and Glendale. I want to thank Paul Kurzer for all the work he's done. John Meyer too, John's been a hard worker, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Vinnie. Next up, I'm going to invite Christina Davis, Chair of New York City's Landmark Preservation Foundation.
behalf of the Landmarks Preservation Foundation, I'm delighted to be back in Ridgewood with Councilmember Crowley, Councilmember Reneso, Chair Srinivasan, Mr. Kersner, and Vinny Arcuri, and so many neighbors who have lived in this community their entire lives. I see many of you are here today. Thank you so much for coming. Last time I was with Councilmember Crowley in your wonderful community, I had the opportunity to ride the carousel in Forest Park, another great New York landmark. And another time, we celebrated Ridgewood North Historic District. Today, we recognize one of the Landmark Foundation's most important activities, the Street Sign Program, which denotes the historic districts in this ever-changing city. To all the students back there, PS 88 who join us today, who are future lawyers and journalists, when you walk around your neighborhood with your friends and look up and see the brown street signs instead of the green one, you know you're in a historic district. There are now 84 brown street signs in central Ridgewood. That's great. This street sign celebrates the history of this specific area and sets it apart. We are standing at the commercial roadway, the entry point into this district, which is great for tourism in Queens. We especially thank Mr. Kersner, the Community Board. I've been on Community Board Manhattan 8 for 20 years, so I know how it works, exactly. The many neighbors and property owners who help to preserve and protect this neighborhood. The Foundation plays an important role in funding this citywide program in collaboration with Councilmember Crowley, the Landmarks Preservation Chair, Srinivasan. We're very happy to be here today. Thank you.
And I want to thank Christina Davis again, because the foundation pays for these brown signs that we see, that let everyone know that we're in a historic district. And I can only imagine how much 84 of them cost. Pretty many. I want to thank Don Passantino. Let's give Don a round of applause. Don is not only on our community board, but every time we do an historic district designation or whenever we have an event such as a street co-naming, Don's there with the sounds, and we appreciate that. This concludes a celebration. We're going to unveil the signs. And then we're going to go up to Cozy Corner, which is this way, just on the corner.
On this side of the street.
All right, so we only have one street to cross. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the signs. Have a good day.